My name is Nischala, and I'm very, very happy to be here with you to talk about this wonderful topic, which is making your children your sadhana. And I will just explain a little bit about my own experience because that's the best way I can share with you. Um, we have right now, he is a 33-year-old, so he was born here at Ananda Village. And he was uh, he was a child that had a difficult birth because he was born with tetralogy of Fallot, which is a heart condition that made it very challenging. And so the first thing, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so if I cough or clear my throat, that's what it is. So what I realized, and we were living up at the Ananda meditation retreat, my husband Nakula and myself. And what I realized very quickly on was that I needed to surrender to what was happening. Now, I had already been in the corporate world in Silicon Valley, and I had had a successful career. I didn't think I would have children ever. So our son's name is Rama, and he was actually, I think he gave us that name when we were trying to choose it. But I realized that I needed to not put myself first, but offer it up to the divine. And just the word that kept coming to me was surrender. And I know all of you are, as parents, you probably have had that experience where you just feel like all you can do is just give yourself to that child in that moment and what's happening in that moment day by day. And this can be very challenging, and it certainly was for me. What I found that I would talk with other parents that had children, and we had a little family group that would get together and talk about the challenges we were having, because I think that all of us, because we were meditators, really, we wanted to keep our sadhana going. We wanted to keep, for me, early on, I was meditating like 5 hours a day. Then once I got married, it went down to three. And then once I had Rama, it went down to almost nothing because, of course, all your energy is going towards your newborn baby. But gradually, I began to meditate a little bit more, and I would switch off with my husband. So I would meditate for a while he watched Rama and vice versa. And that really helped me get through those times. But I think sometimes parents, and certainly those of us that lived in Ananda Village, experience this. You sometimes have a bit of guilt because you feel like, oh, I can't meditate as much as I'd like to, or I'm not perfect, or I have this problem or that problem. And so it's really important not to be too harsh on yourself because if you do, you're blocking the way for Divine Mother to come in and help you. So, that's one of the first things that I would say is not to have guilt and to understand that every spiritual parent who has a child will go through this stage of, am I doing it right? Why can't I meditate at all hours of the night? We have to realize that your child is your sadhana. And what I mean by that is that during the early stages of life, probably for me, it was until he was actually in, I think it was maybe first grade, that I actually had what I considered going back to a real sadhana. But until then, it was very almost non-existent. So our sadhana, the sadhana becomes a way that you can pull together as a family. For instance, it's much more spiritual to spend time together, sharing love, like creating a nice meal together and sitting down and just being with each other in the vibration of peace, something like that is just as good as meditation. Okay? Because it's your intention. Remember, if you have the intention that you want your life to be spiritual and you want your child to grow up spiritual, if you have that intention, then it will happen because it's your intention that matters, even though you may not be able to make your meditation. I will give you an example. When our son was a baby, and we had a little meditation room right near our bedroom, between his bedroom and ours. And I would sit down, I would put him down for sleep, and I would sit down and I would start to do my kriyas, because you're all kriya bonds. I started to do my kriyas, and I'd get about to the eighth kriya, and I'd hear this, you know, crying, and he wanted me. And so, it's like, okay. And I would sometimes, if I tried to keep going with the kriya, he'd keep going louder. So, I mean, they have a way of communicating, and that's by crying and by speaking out and by acting out and different things that they're trying to communicate to you, as parents. So, um, I just had to realize that that's part of my sadhana. And then as he got older, everyone's child is different. Some parents have children that have no discipline problems. It's very easy. But others of us have children that are very challenging. And my son, when he was younger, was challenging. And so, and I want to hear, of course, your questions about what you're going through so I can maybe help each one of you to the best of my ability to kind of get through some of the blocks that you may have. But he didn't get along well with other children in his play group. And so I was trying to understand this, and I'm not recommending this for everyone, but because my child at 1 year old, he had open heart surgery. So that was a very traumatic thing for him to experience as a young soul. And it was traumatic for the parents as well, and all our community. We all prayed for him and everything. But that experience made it, for me anyway, that I would have to just be more mindful of my time with him. And and I began to realize when he got into his play group, when he was 3 and 4, he would act out. And so I was trying to figure this out. Why is he hitting at the other people? Why is he doing that? And so sometimes, Divine Mother speaks to us through others. So, Divine Mother doesn't always just come to you and whisper in your ear. She may speak to you through a friend, through your spouse, through someone else. And so I had someone start to tell me about um, sand play therapy, which is a way for children and also adults to kind of look at what's happening with them. And I did use this for him. And I found out through this experience where the parents go away and the therapist works with the child and they create this sand play using different symbols from her office, things like dragons and elves and whatever. She had hundreds of them. And he created this sand play while my husband and I left the room for about a half an hour. And we came back and I looked down and was like, oh my God, he just had all these big monsters in a circle. And it was like, it's like, what have I done? What is it? And so, and in the middle, he had a few other things. And I was like, well, what does this mean? And the therapist explained to me that the big monsters in a circle was his fear and his way of protecting himself. So the pushing out and like hitting and that whatever was a way of protecting himself because possibly when he was in the hospital, which he was for a long time, he'd been, strapped down so that he couldn't move. And so he did a lot of this. So it was a lot of his own fear that was coming out. And once I had that experience of the sand tray therapy and I could understand what he was doing, then it really helped me. But of course, and I shared that with a lot of the other parents that was friends with here. And so that really helped me because I think everything I'm saying, you have to just somehow figure it out what's going to work for you because what worked for me may not be perfect for you. But what I would say is, as you know, because you meditate, you all have intuition. So sometimes what I would do is I would get really calm when I be with him and I would ask his higher self, how can I help you? And you have to get in a pretty quiet, reflective state to do that. You can also do it when your child's asleep. And you can ask Divine Mother, how can I help my son, daughter, or whatever? And you feel like you're talking to their higher self. And oftentimes you'll get clues and answers. So that was one of the things that I did with Rama. And then I began to see after a while that he went through a period after he was 7. Things started to get better, but then, he had other things all up until he was like in high school. But now he's a very, very wonderful child, very spiritual, very full of light, very compassionate. But he did have those challenges, and so that you have to be patient. You have to understand that what that child is going through, they each have their own karma. They come here and we as parents are stewards for them. They're not, a part of us that we have to mold into a certain being. We have to understand that this is a spiritual being that's come to us for a specific reason. And that reason could be that karmically they are connected to you and somehow you might have been together in a past life. You may have something to teach each other. Sometimes I think my son is an incredible soul and he is a good teacher for me. And so you understand that you're the steward and you're doing the best you can to help them in their life and, get to the point where they can begin to make decisions on their own. So, and in retrospect, even though I had a difficult and challenging child, now he's 33, and I have people come to me and tell me what a wonderful child, what a wonderful person he is. But, when he was growing up, it wasn't that way. And you don't know. We don't know what it is that each being has to go through in this lifetime. We're all different. So, in a nutshell, and I don't want to talk too much because I really want to hear what you as parents have to say and what questions you may want to ask or what experiences you may want to share. So I'm going to open it up to you. Any questions? Any thoughts, any experiences, anything that you're having a problem with your children and with your own spiritual life? Do you feel like it's all going really well? Or are there areas that you feel like you could improve or thoughts? Anyone? Don't be afraid. It's okay.
Yeah, I
I
can.
don't
I
have all the
can.
answers.
I don't know if I have anything specific, but I'll just sort of see where I get to. Um, so my kids, 7 and 9, as somebody said, I resonated with what you said about feeling like guilt. I get a lot of that. Um, we do a lot with our kids. We actually homeschool our kids, or we unschool them. So we don't necessarily follow a curriculum. We let them guide their own path and their own choices. Um, and like I said, we do a lot with them, but there's still this feeling of like, do I do enough? You know, do I do enough with them? Could I be doing more? And there's always, you can always be doing more, can't you? Um, and my life is a little tricky in terms of the balance, as probably, in terms, all of us are probably the same. But I've got a day job, and I've also got a business that I run on the side. Um, and I'm in the transition between trying to move away from the day job and move towards the side business. So it's a lot of work. So it's a lot of time doing that. But like I said, we do make time for the kids, and they've got like little activities that they do here and there. They go to an unschooling school one day a week. They've got a childminder one day a week. And then, on the days that we're with them, I'll hang out with them for half a day. My wife will do half a day. Obviously, they have some sort of free play time. But yeah, I suppose it's just a matter of overcoming that guilt and just doing what you can and doing your best. And um, yeah, and also the guilt about your spiritual practice as well, which could be a lot. You could dedicate a lot more time to it. But yeah, I think it's just figuring it out, isn't it, over time.
So let me ask you this. What do you do to keep your spiritual life in balance with your health?
So as in, okay, so spiritually, I mean, I meditate every day and do my
For how
prayers.
long? For how
For how
long?
long? Yeah, so in the morning, usually, I wake up quite a bit before everyone else. So most mornings I meditate for like 45 minutes, probably. I do energize, but not every day. That's a little bit less consistent. In the evenings, I've been quite inconsistent, really, and I know that the best thing is really to just do a little 10 minutes or something, even if even if. But there have been quite a few days where I'm just tired, and you know. And then outside of that, I serve for Ananda UK, and we've got a lot of stuff going on here in the UK. So being part of that, the spiritual community, we've got a lot of online satsangs, and yeah, get involved where I can.
That's good. One of the things I kept in mind about that evening meditation, if you can just do 14 Kriyas, 24, and then do a little bit of meditation, as long as you don't miss your meditation, it'll really help you. But it sounds
Mm,
like, can you hear me? Okay.
yeah.
Sounds like things are going pretty good for you, but I always have to ask, how do you feel inside? Do you feel like you're getting enough?
Spiritually,
Yes.
probably not realistically. Um, I wouldn't put that on my kids. That's more to do with my own sort of habit patterns, I think, because it gets to nighttime. I can always just, my kids go to bed quite late. They go to bed about 9 or 10. But anyway, whatever the case, I can always go meditate for 20 minutes. So it's always there, the possibility of doing it. It's more just forming the habit.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're going into a new sort of era where you're going to take on another job. Is that
Yeah,
correct? So
yeah.
that's probably going to cut down either time with your children or time for yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so. Although I'm not trying to spend a lot more time on work. I'm just trying to spend more time on the side project and less time on my day job.
I got it. Okay. Well, the one thing, well, you have to figure it out for yourself. I can just my observation is that it sounds like as long as your sadhana is strong like that morning and evening, that's one of the best things you can do because your child will feel that. However peaceful
Mm,
you are, your child is just a mirror to you. So when your child starts acting out, the child is picking up on your inner emotions in your astral spine, they're picking up on what you have inside. So as long as you feel, if you can stay in that space of really being open to what they're experiencing, then, you can just maybe go inside. Maybe it means you need to be more calm or whatever. But that's the only thing I would offer up is that to um, just, be mindful of the two of you, how you project on each other.
Mm.
And then, and like I said, sometimes you may have a child that is more um, energetic or aggressive or whatever, introverted, extroverted than the other. And when that happens, that's just that's their personality or their karma. And all you can do is just do your best to not react. As Yogananda says, all situations are neutral. It's how we react to them that make them good or bad. So sounds really wonderful. And thank you for working with Ananda UK. That's a wonderful way to serve. So,
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to say? Anyone else have a question or want to share an experience parenting your sadhana?
Well, then maybe I could ask something, um, because I know for many of us, probably like Surya was saying, there's quite a lot of activity going on, even for someone like Gayatri who's at home with Aurelia, but then there's a lot going on always. Um, and I've found at least that it's easy for me to just get caught up in that busyness of it. Um, And then it's much easier to lose my center. And then what you said happens, like the child starts acting up and picking up on it. So just ways to help stay away from the busyness.
Mm. That's a really good one because that I think is something that every parent works with that situation. Um, One thing I can suggest is, do you do any journaling about what's going on with you and your child? Do you ever write? Sometimes what you can do is you can write down each day how it went for you, or what was there. There was this situation that happened, and I could have done it better this way, or I was really happy that this turned out okay. Just keep a little journal of how you're doing with your child, just between you and your child. And then the busyness, well, of course, I know you've had an extremely professional, demanding job. So when you have that, of course, your tendency in the job is to be very busy and to be very focused. And sometimes we bring that into our parenting. And sometimes really all the child wants to do is he or she wants your attention. They just want you to be with them, just to be with them and not them have to do anything except that maybe you watch them or maybe you guide them a little, especially with your son because he's almost 2. You might, you just want to let them. Now I know because I met her son, he's wonderful. But let them kind of do what they need to do. And of course, you're not going to let them go out into the street and run out into the street, but you want to be mindful of, are you picking up on their energy? What is happening? And that's, of course, using your intuition. And because you're all devotees, you know that the more you meditate, the more your intuition improves. And so when you meditate in your sadhana, and you're focusing on, doing your breathing and doing your kriyas, and then you can sometimes, what you can do is you can meditate for them. You can sense that, of course, you sense Yogananda inside of you. You can also sense that your child or your children, one and then the other, are inside of you and you're helping them. So you're sort of visualizing yourself kind of surrounding them with the energy from your Kriya. Does that make sense? Um, and also again, not to feel guilty if your child has, you know, big reactions because they're in this world trying to figure out the physical plane and they're going to do things that sometimes you can't understand what that is. But does that make sense? Yeah, just not um, the busyness is, take some time during the day and just write down what it is that is making it hard for you in this particular day of parenting. And then keep a journal of the whole month, and you can keep a journal for the whole year. It doesn't have to be a lot, but just to see what works and what doesn't. For instance, my son was doing this. And so I realized when I did this, he got even more excited. But when I did this, I noticed that he calmly played with his toys or whatever. So just keep a little journal written down so that you don't have to have it in your mind. And then this is a big one. I'm sure you all know about this, but if you don't, it's an exercise that I do a lot when I have a very, very busy, stressful day right before I go to sleep, because my husband and I meditate in the morning and the evening right before bedtime. And when I'm in bed, I just visualize my heart, my astral heart, and I visualize it and I see all these strings that are pulling on it. My son did this, I didn't do that, I did this, I didn't, it doesn't always have to relate to your child, but all these things that you're worried about or are pulling on you, and you, one by one, you go and you clip that string. One by one, I'm going to let go of that. I'm going to let go of that. I'm going to let go of that. I'm going to let go of that until you've let go of all those worries and you just give it to Divine Mother. And then you see your heart polished to a beautiful white gold. So it's free of those tensions that may have been created during the day so that you can sleep, but also just for your own peace of mind. Is there anything else, Sambhavi, that you want to?
Yeah, hi, Nayaswami Nishchala. I'm in Switzerland. I'm not going to be able to stay to listen to the answer because it's our family dinner time.
Oh, that's
But
okay.
since it's being recorded, I look forward to hearing what you will say about this. So we are in the phase of teenage years, and
Ah,
there are some very true realities about the life of a soul and a human being when they reach this age and phase. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about impersonal parenting and how that can help us in our relationship to our child when we reach this point where relationships can become a little bit more perhaps
ah.
conflictual and tumultuous.
Well, let me clarify. What do you mean by in person?
Impersonal,
Impersonal. Okay, I thought you
yeah,
said in person.
not
That's a
receiving,
good one.
not
Okay, I have a lot of good ones for teenage years because I worked a lot in the school with high school boys and college students. I also worked with younger children as well. Well,
So I'm just going to say goodbye, and I really look forward to
okay,
hearing on the recording.
okay.
Thank you so much.
I will answer your question.
Yes, perfect.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Bye,
okay.
everybody.
Blessings to you.
Bye, Guru.
Okay. Well, that's a good one because when your child gets into the teen years, from the time they go through adolescence, 13, maybe up to 16, each one is different. if they're male or they're female, whatever, their hormones are exploding. And so they have that is also their will years. If you know the book Education for Life, that's their will years, and that's when they are testing their will with you. What can I get away with? What can I do? And they're bursting out. They're trying to become their own person. So you don't want to stamp down their will and you know stamp it down so that they don't have it. But what you want to do is give them some guidelines. So I'll give you an example. So this happens a lot with teenagers. Um, oh, Mom, I don't want to do that. I will say, okay, have you done your chores that you need to do? Yeah, I did them. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. And he goes, I'm bored. That's a big one. They go through boredom. And so I said, oh, if you're bored, then that means I'm not giving you enough chores to do. So, and you have to be consistent because as you know with parenting, you can't just do it once. You have to do it every day. Even with younger kids, this works. And we had certain chores that we wrote out that we agreed that he had to do. And then when he'd come back and he'd challenge me with this and he just do this and this, and I would just have to be consistent. Well, if you are bored or you are this, then I'll need to give you some more chores and do it in a very impersonal, just like you're talking to your dog or your cat, but you want to do it in a way that you have love, but that you want the child to feel secure. The more we give children boundaries and little rules, the more that makes them feel secure. Sometimes they need that. Sometimes every child is different, and some need more boundaries and some need less. But giving them boundaries is not a bad thing. So, for the teenage years, the big thing that I found with the teenage years is really being centered in myself because I had a challenging teenager and when we lived up at the meditation retreat, we had the Ananda High School up there, which I taught in. And so they were all up there, so I would see them. And it was quite an interesting, especially this was for the boys, the high school boys. The girls had they were down at the village. But anyway, they will do things that to sort of get a reaction from you. And they may do this every day. They will do something to get a reaction. I want to play video games. My friend is doing this. Why can't I do this? That's a big one. And you have to say something like, well, in our family, we do this. In our family, we don't play video games. Or in our family, we have a story or we do this. And so you have to come back to that, what it is that you as parents decide you want to do together. And then you have to communicate that to them. In our family, we do this. And every day that he or she comes back to you with, I want to do this, I want to do that. Well, in our family, so you have to kind of talk with your spouse or your partner to figure out to do this because you want to talk to them while you're not in front of the children so that you can figure out what it is that you want to say. And of course, you always have to do it with love and without judgment because understanding that you are, the steward for this soul. This soul's been given to you by Divine Mother, and you want to. And so, from an impersonal standpoint, it can be challenging because what if your child starts yelling and starts screaming, or if they have emotional issues and you don't know, maybe that's something they brought from a past life. You don't always want to beat yourself up that it's something you did that caused that. You have to understand again that each child has their own karma. So, having them be around peers that are uplifting in Satwik is one of the most important things. I was always very, very careful who I let my son hang out with during the time he was 12 up to 16 or 17. Very, very careful. I wanted to know where he was going, which house he was going to, because you have no idea what other people will do once, they may not have the same feelings that you do about how to raise children. So you have to be very, very careful. I would just want to know where he was going all the time. I want to know who this person was. I would sometimes meet the mother and father and the child before I let them play together. And sometimes I just see how their energy was. And so who they hang, as you know, Yogananda says environment is stronger than willpower. So at that age, they have less willpower and they can be very influenced because they learn through. So it's very, very easy for them to be influenced, especially if they go to someone's house to play and all of a sudden that person has a video game that you don't agree with. What are you going to do? Or they go to the house with someone who I'm using more boy examples, but a young girl that does something that you don't agree with. I'm not saying that you have to micromanage them, but you have to be very, very aware in those years of where they're going and what they're doing, who they're interacting with. What we used to do at Ananda was we have a saying, when the children were in school, from the time they were in preschool up to high school, we would do this where you always want to visualize the highest in them happening and try to understand that you are energy. So the more you visualize a very positive situation, that situation will come to your son or your daughter and their friends. So always, when when I would take Rama up to the preschool, I would just visualize all the children and the teachers just filled with light that they were going to do the best that they could do because, as you know, we manifest these things. So if you're seeing the highest in your son and your daughter, they can feel that. And so always try to use that visualization if you are discouraged about something that happened. Try to go back into your center and just, see it as see a positive situation happening. Put light around them, visualize them at their highest. She's not on the chat, so I can't answer anymore. But does anyone else have any ideas or thoughts about um, adolescent years? Someone else? Is that Gayatri? Hi, Gayatri. Well,
Hi.
I know you're a child.
Yeah, she's not here.
Hey,
Plan.
hi, sweetheart. Yeah, you might have some things to offer. What would you like to
Um,
say?
oh, here she comes.
Hi, sweet.
Well, just as a fun side note, my husband was actually the dorm dad when
That's right.
Nishila's son was in the high school, so he had some fun stories of the teenage years.
Sure he does. Yeah. Yes. Well, actually, it would be fun to have Peter, her husband, on here sometime because he was the dorm dad for my son and all the things. I'll tell you a really funny story. It's fun. This is kind of stuff that happened, but this was at a meditation retreat, and we all ate together. We all lived up there in cabins and houses. And one morning I came into the breakfast bar, and the cooks always put things out. Well, we the high school guys had taken hot sauce like cayenne peppers and put it in the peanut butter and set it out just because I thought that was funny. They wanted to see what one of the monks that was living up there who was young, actually his name is Naba, you might know him, but he's now no longer a monk. But they they wanted to see his reaction. He was very quiet. And then they were all ho ho ho, isn't that funny? And um it was actually in a way it was kind of funny, but Naba came to me and he said, I think some of the guys might have put something in the peanut butter. And so we had to, as the teachers up there, we had to talk to those guys on their own and ask them how they would feel if that was done to them. So we had to go through this whole, but at the same time with a lot of love and also like, what do you think I should do so that you don't do this again? Should I what kind of consequences? And so we worked on that, which was interesting. But yes, um, Gayatri's husband was the dorm dad. He did a really good job, though. He was wonderful. He had a lot of love, and my son just adored him. And because he was very loving and non-judgmental and very sweet with them. At the same time, he was a guy and he would, play frisbee or do things hiking or do guy things with them. Anyone else? I haven't heard from the two of you, the mom and dad. Can you unmute yourself? I can't hear you.
Oh,
Hi there.
hi.
Hi.
Well, thank you. We just want to thank you, and we don't really have questions. We are lucky because our son is very easy. He's a very easygoing child, and
And a good companion.
a good companion.
Or an old friend.
That's
And how old is he?
he's 8 now.
Chodź, Mićko.
Come say hello.
Can I say hi? Can I say hi?
Come on.
Hi.
Oh,
Yes.
hello. Nice to meet you. I'm sure. Do you like being with your parents? Are they fun? Because okay. I'm just wondering, what's it like to be with your mom and dad? You like it?
Go ahead.
Just say. Yeah, nice.
What's their favorite thing to do with your mom and dad?
Well,
Stories.
he likes going to our center. He likes going to Ananda, Serbia.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'm inviting you out to come to our center sometime out at Ananda Village. And you can come meet me and come. Sambhavi's been there before with her son. I have a son who's 33 now, and I really like young people. So you certainly can come. You all are welcome to come here if you ever do come to the village, and we will host you. But
Well, we do plan to, this is our dream to come in 2026 for the
yes,
celebration. Yeah.
yes, yes. Well, we're hoping we have a big barn that my son and my husband built that is on our land that we hope to have some of the pilgrims from Chennai and others stay there. But you'll be either at the village or right across the street where we are. So it's a great time to meet people, especially families, get together and have that time. Is anyone from the UK coming? Are you in the UK? Which group are you in?
We are in Serbia. And if you haven't heard of Serbia, it's okay. It's very small.
Oh, I know. I absolutely know what Serbia is. Absolutely.
Okay.
So you're not too far from Finland.
Not too far from?
That's wonderful.
Not too.
Finland.
Well, Europe
How-
is pretty small,
Well,
so
yeah.
it's but yeah, it's south.
It's closer to
Europe.
Italy.
closer to Italy than really to Finland. But
Oh,
yeah.
that's right. Okay, Serbia. You're near Slovenia. You're near Slovenia, right?
Yes, yes, Slovenia. Yes, that's right.
Yes. We have some education for life teachers in Slovenia that I
Yes.
worked with, Monica, and yes. Well, it's
Tina.
really, yes, and Tina. It's really wonderful that you have this relationship with your son. I can tell that you give him a lot of love, and he's very fortunate. You're very lucky.
It's now leaving slowly.
But I wanted to
No,
share
that's okay.
this.
You
I
know,
mean,
that's
yeah,
wonderful.
what parenting was for me personally. It was like a wake up call for my sadhana. It's like you use every opportunity that you can. There's no more, oh, I'll have time later. It's like, no, you do it now or you'll never do it.
That's very true. That's very true. Yes, well, it's wonderful. And if any of you are ever thinking of having more children, I did a chapter in my book called The Four Stages of Yoga, which I wrote in 2018. And in there I have a a chapter about everything that Yogananda and Kriyananda have said about having spiritual children, bringing them down um, this into this planet, into the material form. Um, and one of them is praying for a spiritual child to come to you. And we did that. And I feel like our son now has the kind of relationship that the two of you have. He feels like a friend and more than a child. And so that's really wonderful that you have that. So
So I mean, this is something that I mean, maybe if you'd like to share, I think that also parents, when we become parents, we actually realize the power of fear, because now you're no longer fearful for yourself, you're fearful for another being, and that kind of fear is so overpowering, really. And I mean, I've had certain experiences, but maybe you could share something. I'm sure you have, especially with a child that has health issues. These are very, very powerful emotions that we have to work with.
yes, yes. And for me personally, I know I was so concerned about my son that I just gave him all my attention. And after several years of doing that, because he had a long time, he was recovering from this open heart surgery. And so I realized that when I worked with a man who was a Kriya Bond, but he was also a healer, he said to me, I said, I've been having these problems with my back and I had really bad back pain. And he worked on me and he said, and he just was intuiting and he said, do you have a lot of grief? What do you have a lot of grief from? And I realized that I had the grief from having a son who was born with health challenges. And I hadn't properly grieved myself over that because I was giving so much to him that myself, I wasn't nurturing that. So it works both ways. You can fear of him dying. No, I don't have that because um, I've I've worked with that for many years, and I also have talked with him about it. And we would read with him from the autobiography of a yogi from the time he was 7. And his favorite chapter was the resurrection of Sri Yukteswar. Now, that's the one where Yukteswar explains the whole afterlife. And I'm like, why does he want to know about all this? But on some level, he somehow was wanting that. But fear, did I answer your question?
Maybe just share were there any techniques or practices, specific practices that you did to release this? Because I think we fight where we feel that we need to be fearful, like it's our duty, and then we don't want to give it up because it's like, I'm not a real mother, I'm not a real parent if I'm not fearful. So there's this paradox, and
Yes. Well, you know what the antidote for fear is?
yeah,
Who knows what the antidote for fear is?
perfect
The an-
love.
that's right. The antidote for fear is love. So in my heart, if I have fear and worry, it's because somehow I need to shift that into love. And I do when I meditate and after I'm doing my kriyas, after I'm done doing my kriyas and you're sitting in the silence and you're sending love, I send out a lot of love from my spiritual eye and I actually mentally say love, 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 and light, 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 and continue that until it totally absorbs, your meditation room and you feel like you're bathing in that love and light. And that is what you can do each day to kind of keep the fear away. Does that help?
Yeah.
It's a real simple one. It's real simple, but try it and see if it works for you.
Mhm.
Is Gayatri there? I
Yeah,
think
she came back.
she came
I'm
back.
back.
Hi, Gayatri. Do you have
Hi.
any? Yes, she has had health issues too. And she asked a question about what do you do when to keep the fear away?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, I've had my own health challenges, and particularly with postpartum was a particularly difficult physically for me. I had a lot of heart issues, and kind of wasn't expecting that postpartum to be so challenging physically. And so just having to find that balance of, okay, I have a newborn, but then I actually have my own needs that I have to address. And I think as a parent, we want to just selflessly give to our kids and just forget about ourselves, which is, a beautiful practice and a beautiful thing that we're doing in parenting that helps us to forget ourselves. But there are times where it's like, oh, I do need to actually eat today, or I'm about to pass out because my heart, like, I need to take my medicine. I need to, or dress, because how can I care for my newborn if I'm passed out on the floor, or I'm whatever the need is. So just actually having to give some attention to ourselves, finding that balance, and not feeling so much, I think, as we've done this conversation about like parent guilt and feeling guilty, and just not having that guilt. Um, and yeah, I think just on fear, I think it really is love, like real, and trust, and faith um, that we are protected, that we have Divine Mother with us, and really consciously drawing. For me, I really tuned into Master's Mother in this period of newborn, of just really like, to me, she's like such a dear representation of Divine Mother, and I really drew on her. And I'd even sing Dark Eyes a lot in the night with Aurelia, and just really feeling Divine Mother really, really close. Not just feeling my daughter, but feeling me and feeling my husband and our home with that sense of love and that protection. And it just somehow, like, the fear just kind of goes away, and it's replaced with that sense of I'm protected and my family's protected. And yes, there's going to be things that come up, and we might not always understand why we have health challenges, but trusting that we'll respond, and we respond the best way we can, and actively we respond. We're not passive in our challenges, but ultimately trusting and loving, and partnership is really important. That we're not alone in our challenges, and yeah, I don't hope that helps.
Beautiful. And thank you for that visualization of Master's mother and the way you expressed it. That was really, really nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Here she is.
Just have a little snack.
Ah,
But I know our time is really wrapping up, but it was something, Nischala, I was hoping to maybe talk with you, or maybe it's another conversation, another satsang. But really the balance of, we have these souls and our children, and they're coming in not new in their own karma, but then they're also children or babies, and that duality of nurturing both the soul and the human condition of baby phase and toddler and teenage, and just how do you navigate and nurture both of those realities?
that is a really good question. I think that is one everyone faces, every parent. How do you nurture your child and still be able to give them what they need at the period that they're in? Because she's a newborn almost. Well, how old is she now?
18 months.
She's 18 months. So, there's always the Education for Life book, which you can read a little bit in. But what I like to do is actually do the journaling idea, where you may write down each day something that those two things. What have you done to nurture her on a spiritual level? And what have you done for yourself to nurture yourself on a spiritual level? Besides just doing your creed. And then what is it that you need to provide for her? Like soon when she's about 3, I think sometimes you want to introduce her to peers, because little children, they learn a lot from their peers. Almost sometimes they learn best from their information. So you don't want to protect her from others, but you also want to just know what is happening. So